I'm sure most people are familiar with the concept of liminal spaces by now. The phenomenon has become a trend on the internet over the last few years, from 3D art of ominous-looking indoor pools with twisting pathways and halls, to the yellow-tinged labyrinths of the back rooms. In a way, the love for liminal spaces feels like a natural evolution of the early internet's obsession for creepypastas. Scary stories that involved bleach-faced serial killers and haunted video games and cursed SpongeBob episodes. Ooh. I believe a reason for the recent popularity of liminal art has a lot to do with shared experience. Most of us have felt that disconcerted feeling associated with liminal spaces before, but we simply didn't have the words or the definition to describe the phenomenon. But for those who are unfamiliar, liminal spaces are transitionary environments, such as stairways, parking lots, hallways, convenience stores, and so on, that are presented outside of their usual context, such as at night or abandoned. Liminal spaces tend to have limited, unnatural lighting, typically from artificial sources, and are oftentimes composed of highly angular, symmetrical shapes. And maybe most significantly, liminal spaces induce claustrophobia as they enclose around the viewer with no clear opportunity to escape. The amalgamation of these traits make liminal spaces feel dreamlike and surreal, and tend to invoke forlorn nostalgia. I believe it is in the combination of normalcy and the abnormal where our intrigue with liminal design comes from. Much like how the uncanny valley explains why human-looking non-humans elicit feelings of discomfort and fear from us, liminal spaces make us feel a certain way due to the fusion of the familiar with the out of place. So with all that said, I thought it would be interesting to find a few examples of liminal spaces in movies, and discuss what makes them effective and memorable. However, I haven't seen every movie ever, so I will only include those I am familiar with. So don't be too upset when your favorite foreign film that never had a theatrical release and is still only available on VHS is not included on this list. However, if there are any films that I don't discuss here that you feel include liminal spaces, just include them in the comments below. Directed by Peter Weir and released in 1998, The Truman Show tells the story of Truman's escape from the set of a television show in which he has been unknowingly the star. You see, the small seaport town that Truman lived his entire life in was never real, and all his friends, family, and strangers he encountered were just actors. In an attempt to capture the idyllic American lifestyle, the show's creators made things too perfect, and as a result, it feels liminal. Everyone acts according to their schedules exactly the same way every day. Every house, every structure is perfectly maintained and organized. On the surface, the town may mimic the average middle American neighborhood fairly well, but once Truman starts to examine his surroundings, he quickly realizes something is deeply wrong. In some ways, the town in The Truman Show has the same off-putting vibes that sprawling suburbs do, with their millions of identical houses boxed together among their identical yards and gardens and identical cars and identical owners. At the end of the film, after escaping from the town on a ship, Truman crashes into the sky ahead of him, and realizes, to his absolute devastation, that the horizon he was sailing towards is nothing more than a painted wall, with a set of stairs leading up to an exit that upon opening reveals a black void. The combination of angular shapes against the natural environment, and the way the open door appears to be floating in midair make the composition feel like a surrealist painting. And the reason it's so iconic is because it represents all the ways in which Truman's life was designed for him. Nothing was ever real, not even the sky he looked to every day. The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick and loosely based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, depicts the unwinding sanity of a family living alone in a grand hotel during the winter. Probably everyone has seen it, I'm guessing. It's famous for being perhaps the most unsettling horror movie ever, and I think that impression is owed to the Overlook Hotel's liminal design. It's filled with long winding halls covered in orange-red geometric patterns with endless unopened doors. Nearly every room is symmetrical, and the various lobbies are huge, sprawling chambers ordained with Native American art and artifacts. The architecture itself feels like it belongs to another, older time. Every room is massive and empty, leaving the three occupants feeling so inappropriately small in this environment, and subsequently isolated and vulnerable. On top of this, the hotel's layout is an inconsistent labyrinth. The arrangement of rooms makes no logical sense, and it sometimes seems to change. One of the main aspects of The Shining is that nothing is trustworthy. Nightmares bleed into reality. Events that take place off-screen have multiple provided explanations, and the entire passage of time is hard to follow. Both the puzzling narrative and liminal design of the Overlook emphasizes the insanity of isolation. Is the hotel really haunted, or is Jack Torrance just going crazy? Either way, you probably feel like you're going crazy with him. Almost the entirety of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse is liminal. Captured on black and white film, the movie tells the story of two lighthouse keepers spiraling into insanity during the long stormy months of total isolation at sea. Much like The Shining, many of the aspects in The Lighthouse are up to interpretation, and the dark, claustrophobic setting and the liminal aesthetic further adds to its disorienting, confusing atmosphere. The lack of color and bold black shadows emphasizes shapes and silhouettes over form and detail, which makes familiar objects and structures appear foreign and unnatural. The thick gray fog that shrouds the backdrop for nearly the entire film also lends to the dreamlike quality of the island and the sense of being frozen in time and disconnected from reality. There are many different theories as to what is really taking place in the lighthouse, but it's largely accepted that Robert Pattinson's character... How do you say that guy's name? But it's largely accepted that Robert Pattinson's character is stuck in a type of purgatory or hell for a past crime. And over the course of the film, it really does feel like it. Oh look, another Stanley Kubrick film. I guess liminal design is an aesthetic trait of his. There's a lot to 2001 A Space Odyssey that could be considered liminal. From the corporate, futurist design of the ships and space stations, to the black monolith appearing out of place in nature, or the empty wastelands of the lunar landscape. The ending, however, is where I want to focus. After the monolith transports the astronaut Dave through a stargate and beyond the infinite, he finds himself in a bedroom with no exit. The design of the room is quite classical, I guess, decorated with what appears to be paintings and art from many different time periods. The only light source is coming from the floor, which gives the room a sickly glow. Every time Dave turns around, he sees himself much older, until he is bedridden and the monolith appears before him once again, and turns him into a space baby. It happens. The liminal design of the room emphasizes the concept that Dave, and by extension humanity, is part of a cosmic examination. The way Dave is transported to something akin to a normal human environment and made to conduct normal human activities like eating and sleeping is similar to the way humans capture animals and place them into enclosures meant to resemble the ecosystems from which they come from as best as possible. In this way, Dave is kind of like a specimen placed into a cosmic zoo, showing off what makes humans so interesting and potentially worthy of evolution. Or at least that's my best guess, I don't really know what's going on. The entirety of Bo Burnham's comedy special takes place in his recording studio, which is a small two-roomed building. However, Bo is able to utilize the space beyond its limits, using colorful lighting and playing with strong shadows to convey a wide range of moods and ideas. However, as the months pass by, Bo becomes more and more disheveled and unkempt. The room becomes increasingly darker and shifts to a monochromatic blue. You get the sense that Bo is trapped in this tiny little square box, and he cannot escape. After the final song, in which Bo practically breaks down completely, he peers out the window and opens the door for the first time in over a year. The light is overwhelming and the sounds of the outside world come flooding in. However, to his horror, he finds himself on a stage being filmed once again. His studio is inside another studio. Inside is concerned with warning us with how the internet and modernity has disconnected and trivialized human relationships. Over the course of the special, we see how interactions with family, birthday celebrations, sexuality, playing, and a host of other foundational aspects to human life have become shallow and empty in isolation. Bo has his relationship with his audience, but that too is no longer real. The people applauding his exit from his studio are behind a screen. He is still alone. Well, that's all the liminal spaces in films that I could think of. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you have any suggestions for films you think belong here, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See ya.